The first time I said no without explaining, I thought I would throw up. And I know this sounds dramatic, but if you're someone who learned to stay safe by pleasing, explaining, being good, being easy, being helpful, and not disappointing people, you probably understand exactly what I mean. Because sometimes the hardest part is not the no, the hardest part is what comes after: the guilt, the urge to explain, the need to soften it, the fear that someone will think that you're selfish, cold, unkind, arrogant, ungrateful, or wrong. And today I want to talk about that moment because it's important. The moment after the boundary, the moment after you choose yourself, the moment guilt comes in and tries to pull you back into the smaller version of you. Please type in the comments hashtag live if you're watching this live, or hashtag replay if you're watching the replay. And I'm so curious, have you ever said no and then immediately felt like you need to explain, apologize, or fix how someone felt about it? If you did, please type yes in the comments. Okay, so guilt often appears when you break an old survival rule. And the guilt after, let's say, choosing yourself does not always mean you did something wrong. I mean, that's so important to remember and learn. It may mean you stopped obeying an old rule. And we usually think guilt means we did something wrong. That's the first thing we think about. And sometimes, yes, guilt can help us notice when we acted against our values. But not all guilt is wisdom. Some guilt is just programming. Some guilt is the voice of the girl who learned: do not disappoint, do not upset anyone, do not say no directly, do not be difficult, do not need too much, do not create conflict, do not make people uncomfortable. So when you finally choose yourself, your system may react like you are in danger. Not because you're doing something wrong, but because you're breaking the old rule that helped you once in the past, or the one that you've been taught. You see, I remember being in elementary school, and there was a girl who ruled with fear. She told me to bring her sweets the next day. And I knew what could happen if I said no. You know, the backlash, the cold shoulder. But something in me whispered no. And when I said it, I felt fear, I felt guilt, and the ache in my stomach, in my chest. But also something else, the first flicker of self trust. Sometimes guilt is not a warning that you're wrong. Sometimes it's proof that you're living an old role. And boundary guilt tries to make you responsible for others people reactions. Their disappointment may be real, but it does not automatically because becomes your responsibility. It is not your responsibility. And this is where guilt becomes very confusing, you know because someone else may genuinely feel disappointed. They may genuinely wish you had done something differently. They may have their own story about what your no means, and their feelings can be real. But real does not mean yours to carry. This is where many high achieving women get pulled back in. We do not only feel our own discomfort, we start managing everyone else's discomfort too. So we explain, we justify, we over apologize, we make ourselves smaller. We give away energy we do not actually have. And slowly our presence disappears. And recently someone messaged me after a month of silence, and We were reconnected casually, and then suddenly the message shift into, you should have reached out earlier, you should have tried harder, and even you can call yourself a coach, but this is not how a coach behaves. And the old version of me would have immediately apologized, explained, defended, maybe even felt ashamed. But this time, I was not my old version anymore. And I instantly remember that their expectation is not automatically my responsibility. This does not mean I became cold. It does not mean I stopped caring. But it means that I stopped confusing care with self abandonment. Their story can be valid without becoming mine to carry or yours to carry in that case. Because guilt shrinks you when you let it make your decision. Guilt can visit, but it does not have to lead. The problem is not that guilt appears. Guilt may appear especially when you are you are changing, when you are setting boundaries, when you're no longer available for all dynamics. And especially when people were used to getting access to you in a certain way, and then they are not giving it, they are not getting it. And the problem is when guilt becomes the decision maker, the guilt is leading the way, because guilt will usually choose the familiar path. You will say yes, you will explain more, you will make the comfortable, and you will keep the peace and stay small, and you will not risk to be misunderstood. But self-trust asks something different. Self-trust asks, what is actually mine here? What is true? What is kind without being self-abandoning? And what is respectful to them and honest to me? So when guilt shows up, I ask, is this my responsibility? If yes, I act. I repair, I own my part. I respond with integrity. If no, I let it be theirs, not with coldness, but with clarity. Guilt can knock on the door, but it does not get to move into the driving seat. And that's important to remember. And here is one small question you can use the next time guilt shows up after a boundary. Is this mine to repair, or is this there to feel? If I acted against my values, I can repair. If I was unkind, I can take responsibility. If I caused harm, I can acknowledge it. But if I simply said no, if I protected my energy, if I chose something that was honest for me, if I disappointed someone because I stopped over texting or overextending, then maybe guilt is not asking me to apologize. It is asking me to stay with myself while someone else adjusts. There's an image I kept thinking about: a wildflower growing freely by a stream, natural, alive, untamed. And then someone moves it into a curated garden, clipped, contained, controlled. And it starts to wilt, not because it's weak, but because it's not in the right soil. And that is what guilt can do. It can keep you growing inside someone else's designs for you, who you should be. But confidence is returning to the stream, returning to the place where your life has room to breathe. So, you are not selfish because your no disappoints someone. You're not cold because you stopped over explaining. You're not wrong because someone does not understand the version of you that is no longer abandoning herself. Guilt can visit, but it does not have to write your life. And if guilt keeps talking you out of choosing yourself because you are afraid of being judged, misunderstood, seen as selfish, cold, wrong, not enough, I have this $7 gentle course that helps you begin releasing fear of judgment and shame. And if you're tired of proving, pleasing, carrying, explaining, and still feeling that somehow you're not enough, I have a free resource that can help you gently look at what may really be underneath that feeling. I'll put both links in the comments below. Thank you for being here today and welcome home to yourself.